Yeah, sorry about that. We'll crack a joke or something to lighten up at the end.
Hello, and welcome to So You Want to Get Into Politics, Adventures of a Would-Be Councillor. This is a fly-on-the-wall podcast following the journey of my friend Craig as he enters the world of party politics for the first time. I'm Rachel, and I'm a local resident of Bedminster and a town councillor.
And I'm Craig, and I hope that you, the listener, will learn how I can represent you and what I'm about. Rachel, how are we going to do it?
Well, we're going to do a weekly Q&A, hopefully picking up questions from our listeners. Is it like in Shrek when the character comes along with the scroll?
We can talk about local issues. The funding formula for councils is shocking in England, and Dorset gets a really bad deal.
We're going to talk about the week's activities and what you've been up to.
I wouldn't be able to deliver in the same way for the local people of Bedminster. But I think it's quite important that I just put a warning out that sometimes we will go off topic. We are prone at laughing at each other and generally having a bit of a good time.
We are. So this podcast will be available each week from wherever you get your podcasts. So don't forget to subscribe, like and share to get up-to-date episodes. Well, good evening, Craig. It's Sunday evening. It's Mother's Day. Have you had a nice day?
Hi, Rach. Yeah, no, really good. Did some Mother Day type things, went for a walk, sort of took a day off of campaigning, really, just enjoyed the day as much as possible.
Good. I'm glad you did. That's absolutely the right thing you should do, is take the day off and devote your love and affection and your time to your long-suffering, gorgeous wife.
Yeah, I'm sure she'll agree with you.
Yeah, I'm sure she paid me to say that. Right. If it's okay with you, we're not going to cover what you've been doing over the last week. I want to jump into some questions from local residents because they're really meaty questions that I think you'll be able to give some great answers for. Hopefully you'll be able to give some great answers for and clear up some information that they would like.
Sure, no problem.
So we've had a question from Phil Scadding. He is asking why you are representing the Conservative Party and you haven't gone as an independent. He's not sure how it works. He feels that perhaps any comments that have been made about you are purely because you are a Conservative, but as a person, you're very well liked. So it would be really good to circle back. We covered this in our first episode, and it would be good to circle back as to why you have joined the Conservative Party and you're not running as an independent.
Yeah, no, sure. Okay. So first of all, thanks, Phil, local legend and supporter of the fridge and loads of other stuff we do. So thanks for the question. Really, there's two answers to this. The first one is I am a Conservative. So I joined the party a couple of years ago. The honest one of the reasons why I joined is because I felt disillusioned with kind of national politics and what was going on, and I've always believed in, rolling your sleeves up and getting involved if you don't think something's right. That's why I became a parish councillor 13 years ago, and why Phil very kindly references all the things I do locally. That's just my mindset towards dealing with local issues. So, but that's the first main reason, is in terms of my kind of political positioning, sort of where I am in my head and my heart, I would say I'm a Conservative voter. I would describe myself as fairly kind of centre of politics, quite liberally minded in terms of community issues, but also believe in protecting our local traditions and being sensible with budgets and all those sorts of things. But it's because really at the end of it all, I would say that I'm a Conservative. The question about standing as an independent is really interesting. It's something that has been in my mind in the past, and I'm sure that in some respects I may, it may benefit me if I was an independent ward councillor instead of a Conservative councillor. But the reason I didn't go down that line is because I'm not independent, and if I stood as an independent, ultimately I wouldn't be reflecting. I wouldn't be honest with the ward members that voted for me, because that's not how I feel or think. in that sense. And the second reason is basically Dorset Council is a political council, whether you agree with that or like it. It is a political council. So if you want to be on Dorset Council and you want to be in a position to actually make positive change, it's a political organisation. So if I won the vote as an independent councillor, which I'm not, but if I did, um, I wouldn't be able to deliver in the same way for the local people of Bedminster. So that's the main two reasons why. The last point I'd just make really from the question as well, because it came on Facebook, is I know Phil kind of asked, or I'll speak to Phil direct. I know Phil that you made the suggestion that a few things that you've read on social media suggest that I would do better because it's maybe it puts people off. I think there will always be a few people within the ward that will be put off by the fact that I am the local Conservative candidate. I'm hoping in the next 6 weeks, 2 months ish, I can put across a really positive and productive message of why you should still vote for me, because this is a local election on local issues. So whether I'm a Conservative or not, I think I've got the best message for our town locally. But actually, one of the things I've found since I've started campaigning is I've spoken to about 150 people so far. And a lot of those people are not put off by me being a Conservative. The majority of those people are actually really glad that I'm standing as a local Conservative candidate, because there is a good portion of our town that feels and thinks the same as me, but are also possibly slightly disillusioned with the national picture and see me standing as their local Conservative candidate as a bit of a breath of fresh air. So those Conservative voters, or those wavering Conservative voters, I feel that have definitely come on board with me standing as a Conservative. And I really hope that people that really like me and respect and value the work I've done for the community over the last 5 years can look past national politics and focus on local issues. Because if you don't focus on local issues in this local election, the worst case scenario could be that the best person does not get the job for the council. And if that's not me, I want people to, vote not for me because they don't think I'm the best person, not just because I'm a Tory, because that ultimately will let our area down, I think, without sounding too big-headed. But that's my answer, is why I'm standing as I am.
Well, it's very clear, isn't it? And I think hopefully that will answer Phil's question. And I think there's been a bit of rumble about us people asking why it is that you've gone for Conservative, and to the bottom line is because you are Conservative. That is it. It's
Yeah,
clear.
absolutely. And again, the second thing I would just reiterate is, Facebook can be a bit of an echo chamber sometimes. I welcome challenge, I welcome debate. I'm happy to, well, what's the expression, disagree agreeably with people. I get all that. I want to make myself as available as possible so people like Phil can ask these questions. But a handful of people having a negative view of me because of my politics or political party is not a reflection of this town. And I've seen that firsthand on the doors, on the surveys. I know that the majority of people are supporting me as the candidate, but more importantly, supporting me because it's me. And that's the main thing. So don't worry, Phil. Most people don't feel the way that you may have read. Most people are actually really pleased to see me on the ticket. So hopefully, Phil, you can support me too, even if you don't like Conservatives.
Brilliant. Thank you. Okay, so we go on to another question. This is meaty as well.
Yeah, we just dealt with the easy one.
Yeah, that was the easy one. This one is sort of stand by your beds. Here we go. So this is from Jutt Davis, and he says, what about the ridiculous amount of council taxes and how it's putting more strain on hardworking families' incomes, one of the highest in the UK? And there's been some comments that came from that question because it was on Facebook.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give your views on this and, talk a little bit more about that? Because it's obviously a very sensitive issue to a lot of people, and I think it would be helpful to hear what you think.
Yeah, of course. Yes, this is a big question, but thanks to Jutt for asking it because obviously I was following the conversation online as well. I'm going to answer it as a town councillor stroke resident because I'm not a Dorset councillor at the moment. Obviously I'm standing for the future council, but I'm not involved in the past. So really my knowledge and experience of this subject is based on being a resident who's engaged with this sort of stuff and a local town councillor. So, so the first thing I would say personally for myself is that I am pro low tax, and that's one of the reasons I would call myself a conservative. But actually, more importantly than that, I'm pro fair tax, and that's why I would describe myself as a bit of a liberally minded conservative. Because actually, I think paying taxes are, it's an important part of society, and those taxes need to be used, in the most efficient way to fund really good public services. But I think the big part of that whole process is to be transparent and open about how that taxpayers' money is being spent. And I think one of the issues with Dorset Council historically is that it's not that they're not transparent, but the communication of how that money's collected and why it's the rates that it is and everything else isn't always translated across to residents. And certainly in West Dorset, we don't necessarily feel like we get a share of that tax that we pay. So I'm all for low tax, but I'm much more pro fair tax. And hopefully I can kind of explain why I think this is begrudgingly a fair tax. So a little bit of history. 5 years ago, 5 or 6, I don't even know how many it was, 5 or 6 councils merged into one and under the local government reorganisation. So it was 6 councils became one, which is now Dorset Council. So this is the first election of Dorset Council. All the other councils previously are no longer exist. Now, part of that merger meant that this council had to find savings of around 120 million to be able to maintain services and not go into deficit. Now, there's loads of issues with that in terms of how the government fund local councils, and I agree with everyone that's commented on this. The funding formula for councils is shocking in England, and Dorset gets a really bad deal. We're one of the worst funded councils in the UK. I think we get something like £700,000 from the government, and a similar sized council in another part of the country would get multi-millions. So this
Oh
is a
my
big,
goodness.
yeah, yeah. I mean, massive. I think Leicester City Council, which is the same size as us in terms of population, gets like 75 million or something stupid. Don't hold me to the numbers, but the point is, it's all out there in public access. If you want to Google it, we get pitiful funding. So a lot of the savings that needed to be made by Dorset Council had to come by efficiencies and saving money within its own programme. And the council of the day said that they would do that without cutting services. So there's obviously a debate around whether we've had services cut or not, and you could probably spend hours bouncing around. Well, that was cut versus with the greenest council in the country and all that sort of stuff. But I'm not here to defend the current council. I'm just saying it as it is, really. So the council needed to save 120 million, and broadly they've done that, I think. So what that meant was, or part of that saving or balancing of the books, is that we have high council tax. And there's a few reasons for that. One is the government don't give us any money. And two, it's all around sort of how many heads live in the count, in the ward, in the county. But we Dorset Council this year delivered a balanced budget, and one of the ways they balanced the budget was by using about £12 million of reserves to be able to deliver all the same services without making any cuts. And then for council tax to be the rate it is, which is 4.9 something percent. Now, the point that Jutt makes that we're one of the most expensive councils in the country is true, but we're falling, and we're falling for a couple of reasons. But the main reason we're falling in that league table, we were third most expensive. I think we're now 17th. is because other councils in and around that league table are going bankrupt. And that's the issue that we have as a local council. And I personally think that this current Dorset Council have done a really bloody good job, because we've had a similar challenge at a town council level. And this is why I have some sympathy, where we've had to balance our books because our energy rates have gone up and all that stuff. That meant for us to balance books, we had to save thousands. Dorset's saving millions to try and maintain those services. So that's basically why it's high. We're one of the lowest funded councils in the country. And lots of different things go on in the background. That means we have a lot of money to sort of spend out. This year, the total budget is 370 odd million, but 70%, nearly 70% of that is spent on adult and child social care.
Mm.
So of that 376 million, 148.3, and I've got some notes here so I get it right, is spent on adult social care, and 67.7 million is spent on child social care. So the vast majority of taxpayer money goes on helping the older, vulnerable, ill health population, or the younger, vulnerable, or ill health children in Dorset. And one of the other challenges is that we have a higher than average or a disproportionate level of older residents in Dorset, because people obviously come here to retire. So nearly 70% of all of that is spent on looking after the old and the young. And then the rest of it's obviously divvied among other services. So that basically means this current Dorset Council has two choices. The first is to try and deliver a balanced budget, maintaining services and supporting those vulnerable people, or they don't deliver a balanced budget. They use more reserves, and every council has reserves and legally has to have reserves. And eventually, if you keep spending more than you're getting in, you go bankrupt. And the result of that will be far worse for people like Jut, because you only have to look over the border to BCP or Somerset, and both those councils on the verge of bankruptcy. And when that happens, they can seek permission from the government to increase council tax rates over 5%. So Somerset asked to raise council tax by 10%. The government said no. So what they're doing is they are cutting non-essential and essential services for their residents, whilst putting council tax up to the maximum level. And one of the things they're doing, which scares me as a town councillor, is they're looking to pass on some of those services, like leisure centres, like libraries, like those sorts of stuff, to town and parish councils, because town and parish councils can, in theory, raise council tax by any percentage they want. So it's a way of taxing people more through town and parish. But the reason that scares me as a chairman of a town council is that Somerset County or Dorset or whoever have hundreds of staff that run all these things and everything else. If you think about us, Rach, at Bedminster, we've got 3 members of staff in the office, a groundsman. You know, we can't run a leisure centre.
Yeah.
It was absolutely crazy. So if you don't have a balanced budget, you'll have a bankrupt council, and you'll have higher council tax and less services. And going back to my original point, 70% nearly of Dorset's budget is spent on the vulnerable. So if we have to cut essential services, what's going to get cut?
Yeah.
And that's why, yes, I think the government funding structure is wrong. I know that our local MP is constantly going on about this. I'm a bit of a loser, so I watch Parliament TV and all that stuff. So I know that stuff's going on. I know some people might not necessarily believe me or whatever you want to call it, but I think the choice between a balanced budget and doing your best to deliver services within that budget versus just spend it until it's all gone, I'm for balanced budget. So yes, Jack, that does mean our council tax is high, but I hope that with that brief explanation, people listening to this might think that yes, it's high, but I kind of get it. And hopefully things will change in the future. I'm not optimistic of things changing quickly, regardless of which government we have in the next term, whether it's a Conservative government in Parliament or a Labour government in Parliament or any other possible. None of the big parties are grabbing this thistle. So for the short term, at least, what we need at Dorset is a sensible bunch of councillors who will deliver balanced budgets, and that's what I will do. So yeah, it's expensive. I pay the same council tax. It hurts, but I've moved from a previous council that had one of the lowest rates, and they have almost gone to the wall as well, and that is even worse. So I think a transparent kind of budget is the lesser of two evils. But one of the things that I talk about for my personal campaign is, West Dorset and Bedminster seeing a bit more bang for its buck. One of the things that I'm going to do as the local ward council, if I'm lucky enough to be elected, is I will argue and fight and pinch and steal as much of that funding as possible for the local services in West Dorset and the local services in Bedminster. And I will also make myself available through regular councillor surgeries, newsletters, online updates. I'll be writing in local magazines. I'll be as visible as possible so I can explain to people what's happening with your money. So hopefully, as things progress, people will understand a bit more where their money's going. And I think that's part of the problem. So breathe. That was a
Yeah.
really long answer,
Yeah,
but it's
but
a
it
really
sounds
important point.
like it sounds like and that's all really important and does make complete sense. And I think you've explained it brilliantly. But it sounds like what your intention is to make sure we as local residents, Jut, and all the people that he is representing as well, will get more bang for their buck by you being very visible and understanding what's needed and being able to draw on the resources of those services that are not going to be cut as a result of the
Yeah.
council tax being the level that it is.
And I think that, there's things in the pipeline and there's things that's being talked about that can help to maintain those budgets and actually make things better. So for example, the current Dorset Council local Conservatives had cross-party agreement in last October to explore what they're calling a devolution deal, and that's where Dorset will reach out to two or three neighbouring or local authorities, so like Somerset, Devon, Wiltshire, whatever, and they will go into like a combined deal where our council tax money will be spent on our services, but it will provide us with bigger buying power. So when things like really good example, and this again going into my other key pledge around rural connectivity and improving bus networks and everything else. One of the benefits of a devolution deal will be cross-border bus services being offered, so we can do a deal with Devon and Somerset, where those three councils buy into a bus service, which means it's a bigger person at the table buying those services, which means we can have more influence around re-establishing rural bus networks. So there's stuff on the table that can make it better if the right people are steering it. And I'm not, and I don't say this as a political statement, but if you look at Somerset, that's a Lib Dem run council, 100 million in the red. It's going to hell in a handcart. BCP, Lib Dem council, turn off. They're getting rid of like street wardens, like kind of PCSO people. They're turning off CCTV cameras to save money. They're doing some really drastic stuff to save money. But then if you look at Hampshire, to be kind of level, Conservative run administration have also, informed the government recently that they're struggling to cope too. So this isn't just, the Lib Dems just bankrupts everybody, and the Conservatives are great. It's not that, but what I'm saying is, I think this Dorset Council have done a pretty good job, and I worry that it won't be maintained to that sort of standard in the future if we don't carry on.
But is there any help or support for local residents with their council tax?
So there are two other bits of news with regards to council tax from April. The first is that as part of the budget on council tax in Dorset Council, Dorset have also increased the level of council tax support to 100%. So any households that qualify for council tax support will have their council tax 100% covered by Dorset Council. So hopefully that will provide some help to kind of low income families and people that qualify for that support. And the second bit of news on the council tax levels is that as a result of legislation passed last year, I think it was, Dorset Council now have the power to increase council tax rates on sort of second home holiday homes, and they've done that. So as of the next financial year, council tax on second home holiday homes will actually be increased by 100% as well. So that will be additional revenue on second homes, which I personally hope will um, free up some housing back into sort of local housing stock for local people to either buy or rent. So that's sort of two other bits of news with regards to council tax.
Right.
So there you go.
Good. Yes. Right. That was very strong on that. Right, let's lighten the load. I want to bring things back to glitz and glamour and fanfares and exciting things. You said to me a while back that there's a specific date in the calendar, and I'm sure you said the 10th or the 11th when it's officially when all of this happens officially. You said something about publishing a nomination notice or something. Come on, educate me on that. What tell me what, just remind me what that was.
Yeah, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
What you're talking about is that the notice of election will be published tomorrow. So
right.
that's when the official period begins. That's when it all starts and kicks off. And yeah, then we're in the then that's it. We're in.
Uh,
So
Is it
between go on.
is it like in Shrek when the character comes along with the scroll
It, it
and
it's just like
does
that.
that announcement? Is it?
It's exactly the same.
Is it? Is that where they got it from?
That's exactly where they got it from.
Yeah.
It's a bit like that. It's just a bit more of a formal notice where basically Dorset Council, like well, exactly what it says on the tin, they're publishing that notice of election. So between the 11th of March and a date in early April, I can't remember when it is. That period is when all the candidates for the towns, the parishes, and the Dorset Council elections need to sort of put their nomination papers in. So at some point in early April, the ballot papers are then printed, and my name will be on that piece of paper along with um, others, hopefully.
So
And
can
then
I suddenly do it? Can I now with all the wisdom and the information you've shared with me, I can go, I'm now going to step forward as an independent candidate. Can I do that? I'm not,
you
obviously.
can. I think you should
I think
actually.
you'll annihilate me, so
I
I'm
think
not gonna.
I think you should stand as a member of the Monster Raven Party.
Yeah.
A
Okay.
resurgence of the Monster
Yeah.
Raven
Okay, I
Party.
can do that.
But yeah, that's yeah. So there we go. So tomorrow it all starts to become a bit more serious.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. It'd be great.
So at the moment, we've got a very high presence of you. We
Yep.
know that there is a Lib Dem candidate,
Yep.
and but that's it. That's all we've seen. Are you saying then that we could then now start to see other parties coming forward, other individuals coming forward, and why? Have you just kind of given yourself a bit of a head start? Is that
I wouldn't say I've given myself a head start necessarily. I think to be fair to the Liberal Democrat candidate for the ward, a guy called Paul. Nice guy. We both know Paul. Shout
we
out to
do?
Paul.
Yeah,
Lovely bloke. Paul's been campaigning for months. He's been out posting leaflets and um, and I'm really impressed with his work rate. He's really out there doing it. So fair play.
yeah.
Um, I think, but at the moment, that's all I know of. I think the local Greens have announced their candidates, but they don't appear at the moment, at least, to be putting a candidate up for Bedminster. But maybe they will. Um, as with the Labour Party, I have not heard anything from Labour or Independents. But I hope there are other candidates. I think it might be a bit a bit boring if it's just me and Paul, but
Yeah.
but maybe not. But
Well,
no,
maybe not boring, but it does give a more
it gives people
varied
choice.
viewpoint. Yeah, and gives
Yeah,
people clearer direction.
yeah, and I think I mean one of the big things for me as well is I'm very kind of pro democracy, so I think people should have a choice. So
Mm.
I'm hoping there's there's a few more candidates that want to stand and make a good argument for Bedminster as well. I mean I might not agree with all their arguments, but I just want a really good ticket of really good local people with all different views. So the electorate has choices, and they're all good choices, and hopefully they all choose for me. But
Yeah.
if they don't, then that's fine. We all make mistakes. I'm joking. But it's all good. I As long as it's from my perspective at least, I've talked about being a local candidate for local elections, standing on local issues, and my campaigning won't be any different. I'm not interested in getting into those like dirty games and scrappy politics. Bedminster's better than that and deserves better. So, I'm sure people like Paul and I, or other candidates from other parties can either agree or disagree amicably, and that would be a wonderful thing for all of us, I'm sure. So,
Yeah.
so
Very
there,
nicely put.
if there's anybody listening that thinks, "Oh, I might stand," Craig sounds like he does, like an absolute idiot, then I would recommend that you do.
You'd welcome it. Yeah.
Yeah,
They can join us. They can come on and talk to us.
exactly. Let's do it. Let's have a hustings, or what do they
Yes.
call it? Anyway,
Okay. Right. You can now go back and massage your wife's feet or do whatever it is that she requires of you, just
I,
to, see the end of Mother's Day out.
I will. And again, thank you to Jut and Phil for those questions that really sort of got us thinking. And getting quite heavy into the debate. So yeah, more questions the merrier. I enjoy the chance to share my ideas and views.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. And next week we're going to deep dive into one of your other topics, and talk about that as well. And we'll give more details on that in the coming week. But anyway, have a good week.
And
I
you
will see you around. And yeah, thanks for your time.
stay safe.
So don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to get up-to-date episodes. And I'll do it. What do I need to do? What do I need to do?